Spain and Turkey isn't what is making you sleepy, it's the enormous amount of food and sweets that you have just been eating. Vaccines don't cause autism, no one's hiding the cure for cancer. Come learn some science with me, not from memes and influencers.
You're watching News Now from Fox. I'm Daytona Everett. I am joined now by Dr. Knock. He is a social media famous scientist specializing in COVID-19. Thanks for joining us, Doctor.
Daytona, thanks for having me. Yeah, happy to be here. Chat about COVID-19, vaccines, whatever you want to talk about. Let's do it.
There we go. So let's just start with, what are your credentials? Because obviously you're on social media and people want to know, where did you study? Where are you coming from?
Sure. Yep. So PhD scientist. I work in the development of antibody-based drugs. I got my PhD at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where I studied immunology and pharmaceutical sciences, working on developing drugs for all respiratory diseases, which made it for a very quick pivot into COVID-19, on influenza, some other viruses. And so it's been a pretty quick shift over to COVID and the pandemic.
So, what brought you onto social media? What made you think, hey, maybe this is a good platform to be spreading science news?
It's a great question. Really, it was a reaction to the spreading of non-science news about the pandemic. I was on Instagram and TikTok back in February, and what I was seeing was a lot of very incorrect theories about the pandemic that were coming up and just going super viral. Mm-hmm. There was basically no one. There's still relatively few actual scientists and doctors on the platform making content. But I thought, if the misinformation is going viral, maybe we should try to put some of the actual science on there as well. Because if people are going to be getting their news from TikTok or from Instagram, debatable whether they should be doing that, but people are. And so the correct information should be there.
I'm a scientist who studies COVID-19. Very common question. Do the vaccines have nanotechnology? The answer is yes, they do. They have nanoparticles. But that's just a unit of scale. They have little spheres of lipids that are about 100 nanometers in size. That's very different from nanorobots or what you may think of when you typically hear nanotechnology. The purpose of those spheres of lipids is to protect the mRNA, which is in the middle of those spheres, because RNA is actually not a very stable molecule on its own. It needs to be protected until it gets to your cells. Lipid nanoparticles like this have been in use for decades, actually. The first lipid nanoparticle was approved in 1995, and instead of encapsulating mRNA, it encapsulated a cancer drug. These are very well understood and have nothing to do with uploading your data to the cloud.
What is the most common question that you get, maybe through your messages or people commenting specifically about COVID-19?
Yeah, it's evolved over the pandemic. And so recently there was an AP NORC poll that looked at, what fraction of people want to get the vaccine, what fraction of people don't want to get the vaccine. And then of the people who did not want to get the vaccine, they asked them a few more questions about why? What are you concerned about? One of the most common answers to that was people are afraid that the vaccines can actually give you COVID-19, like an actual infection, which it can't because there's no infectious virus there. And recently, all the questions have been about, can I get sick from the virus? Will it make me test positive? Could I be contagious even if I don't develop severe disease? Sort of questions about, now that the vaccines are rolling out, safety-related questions, pregnancy-related questions, anything along those lines.
Yeah, and what is it like trying to explain to people? These are pretty complicated subjects. So how do you break it down for the average person to understand what this virus is? And I saw your post about pregnancy too, and the vaccine, how it affects, how do you simplify this for the average person?
That's a great question. And it's something I've learned. I don't really have any experience in posting on social media prior to the pandemic. One thing that you don't really appreciate as a viewer of media is when you're making content, it's a sort of a one-way activity. You don't know who's on the other side, what level of training they have. And so I try to make a mix where it's a message you can interpret within 30 or 45 seconds, because our attention spans are always getting shorter. You also have to put enough actual science in there that it's not as simple as saying, the vaccines won't give you COVID-19. It's helpful to explain why that is the case, because, people may not believe if you just say a one-liner on a sentence, particularly on social media. If you show some data and show how to interpret that data, that can be really helpful.
This is something that you probably don't understand very well about COVID-19. We are talking about aerosols, which are really small particles that get produced when you breathe or when you speak, and they're small enough they float in the air sometimes for hours. They can travel much farther than 6 feet. They can travel across an entire room. If someone is infected and they don't know it, they could be sitting 15 feet away from you inside, and over time, slowly, those aerosols would build up indoors, particularly if it's a poorly ventilated space. Now, opening the windows or opening a door can help with this issue, but it's never going to be as good as being outside, where the aerosols will just float away. This is how super spreader events happen. You've got a group of people in a room, not wearing masks. It's relatively poorly ventilated. Over time, the concentration of virus in the aerosols in the air just steadily goes up until it's at a high enough concentration that you get infected. Don't let it happen to you.
Do you have recommendations for people who are just kind of perusing on social media, from finding out what's fact versus fiction? People to be looking and actually looking up to as experts.
Yeah, I would treat everything with an extreme degree of hesitation. My general principle, even for viewers of my content, is I say, don't trust me, don't trust what I'm saying. Use this, what you're seeing on social media, as a jumping off point to learn interesting topics or, potentially interesting references, and then go actually investigate those primary sources. Because although there are some people on social media who are putting out the correct information, we're outnumbered probably 10 to 1, easily 10 to 1, maybe 19 to 1. And so I would be extremely skeptical, and always you have to go and verify with some larger sort of credible source.
Yeah. So how do you make them fun? That's my question, because you obviously have several followers online. What kind of feedback are you getting, and how do you, come up with new, unique ideas?
Yep. The best way is to make it sort of reactive to comments. And so if you see the same comment coming up 20 times in a row or something, like, oh, people are interested in this, let's try to apply that to a trend that's going on, on Instagram or on TikTok or something. And this is a big challenge, actually. And this is part of why misinformation is such a problem, is it's inherently much more exciting than the actual science often. Vaccine is going to make your arm fall off, or 70% of people are going to have anaphylaxis, which is not true, obviously. But that's just more exciting than saying the reverse, saying it's not going to give 70% of people anaphylaxis. And so the way that social media algorithms are programmed is, the longer watch time a video has, the more shares it has, the more viral it goes. And so you do have to try to game the system somehow with the correct information to try to get it to achieve that similar level of shareability, whether it's like pretty pictures or doing it to music or something. That's probably the biggest challenge, actually.
Yeah, making it entertaining, even though it's basically a science lesson, right? You're like,
right.
The modern day, who's the guy that we all watched in school? Dr. Nye, Bill Nye.
It's like, this is how mRNA works. Because realistically, how many people, think a year ago, how many people would be interested in following an immunologist on social media?
This is how COVID-19 may cause some people to lose their sense of smell. First of all, where does smell happen? It does not happen in your nose in the respiratory epithelium. It actually happens all the way back up here in your olfactory epithelium at the back top of your airway. In that olfactory epithelium, you have olfactory sensory neurons, which are responsible for actually detecting the chemicals in your airway and transmitting that signal up to your olfactory bulb. This research paper found that the olfactory sensory neurons don't express ACE2, the molecule that the spike protein interacts with to infect your cells. However, the neighboring supporting cells do express ACE2. So what may happen is these supporting cells may get infected by coronavirus, causing local inflammation that causes damage to the neurons or causes them to die, resulting in a loss of smell until they recover or regrow.
It's not 350,000 people. It's
Yeah.
like a handful of people who probably already know some immunology. So it is a challenge to present it in a way that's approachable and entertaining enough that people will share it.
Yeah, so let's talk about just vaccines really quickly, because this is the most timely topic as of right now. Is it safe to be taking these vaccines, in your opinion?
Yes. So the way the FDA weighs this, it's a benefit-risk assessment. The vaccines certainly have side effects. The side effects can be severe, right? Fatigue, muscle weakness, potentially allergic reactions in some people. Those can be bad. But what you have to weigh it against is the potential severity of a COVID-19 infection. And so in that perspective, the vaccines are way, way, way preferable to an actual infection. Pretty much every question and hesitancy that people have about the vaccines, even for the mRNA vaccines, people may think, I don't want foreign RNA inside of my cells. Well, RNA virus does, because COVID is an RNA virus. It puts RNA in your cells and it hijacks it to make more of itself. The virus itself can cause heart damage, lung damage, vascular damage, potential neurologic symptoms that can last for months, with long hauler symptoms. In comparison, the vaccine is a far preferable alternative to that. So although it's not, 100% safe, it does have that fever and fatigue and everything. It's way better than what could potentially happen with the COVID-19 infection.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously COVID-19 isn't going away anytime soon, but when things get to go back to normal a little bit, are you going to continue with your scientific TikToks and social media, Instagram posts and everything?
Yeah, I plan to. And so actually, interestingly, even within the pandemic here, public interest in COVID has sort of waxed and waned, where at the very beginning, everyone wanted to know everything about COVID, and then people got tired of COVID for a while. And sort of in that interim, I kept making posts about, these are 3 tips to sleep better, or this is what exercise does to your risk of neurologic disease later in life or something. It reduces it. And so stuff like that, I definitely continue to keep making once people lose interest in COVID again. People get vaccinated and the risk goes down. So yeah, I'm going to keep trying to take sort of health-related publications and take, a big study and distill it into a 1-minute video, hopefully that has a message where you can apply it to something that changes your behavior or changes how you think about something. Yeah, I'm going to keep going with it.
Last question, which post is your favorite?
Which post?
Yeah, which video?
Okay, I don't know if you've seen this one. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was talking about, as an immunologist, now I understand what climate scientists are like all of the time, with the general public dabbling in science and thinking they have a better idea than the actual scientists. And then I cut really quickly to me standing in the shower, basically just yelling in the shower. My favorite video. Not very educational, but representative of, the sort of sentiment.
Educational and entertaining, we got to do both, right? All right, I think that's good for us here on News Now from Fox. Dr. Nock, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you spreading the correct information online.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.